It is 1932, and your great-grandmother is standing in a kitchen the size of a coat closet on Mulberry Street. The window is cracked because the stove has no vent. She has 14 cents, a half head of garlic, a heel of bread 3 days past hard, and 4 children sitting at a table with their hands in their laps. That 14 cents bought enough to feed all 4 of them dinner and breakfast the next morning. Today, 14 cents will not buy you a single packet of ketchup at a fast food counter. On the sill beside the cracked window sits a small glass jar filled with cloudy water and lemon peels. She never throws it away. She never explains what it is for. You have been told these were desperate women making desperate food, scraps thrown together because they had nothing. That belief is wrong, and it did not happen by accident. Someone made sure you would think that way, and this video will show you exactly who. Number 14 on this list is a trick the USDA tried to document in 1942 after field researchers watched Italian women in East Harlem stretch a single pound of flour into 3 separate meals, and the government could not figure out how. Number 8 involves that jar of cloudy water on the windowsill, the one your great-grandmother never explained, and it connects to a preservation method that a Cornell University food scientist in 2004 confirmed was more effective than refrigeration. Number 3 is a bread technique that Italian grandmothers used for over 200 years that a high-end Manhattan restaurant started charging $26 a plate for in 2019, without ever crediting where it came from. Hit subscribe now, because by the end of this video you will have 25 kitchen tricks you can use tonight, and you will finally understand what your grandmother was actually doing when you thought she was just cooking. Let's count down the tricks they perfected, the ones nobody wrote down, and the reasons you were never taught them. Number 25, the breadcrumb stretch. Your great-grandmother crushed stale bread with the heel of her palm against a wooden board until it turned to crumbs. She put those crumbs into meatballs, onto roasted vegetables, across the top of baked pasta. In 1927, store-bought breadcrumbs cost 20 cents for a bag. Hers cost nothing. Every meal she cooked carried the ghost of yesterday's bread. That was not waste, that was a system. Number 24, the onion skin broth. The papery outer skins of every onion went into a pot of simmering water in your great-grandmother's kitchen. She added salt and whatever bones she had. Those skins turned the water golden and gave it a sweetness no powder could match. In 1931, a pound of onions cost 3 cents. The skins cost nothing. We now pay $4.29 for a box of broth that tastes like the cardboard it ships in. She made better for free. Number 23, the bread bag on the nail. There was a cloth bag hanging from a nail in your great-grandmother's kitchen. Every household on Mulberry Street had one. It held bread that had gone hard. That bag was never empty because bread was never thrown away. In 1929, a loaf cost 9 cents and a family of 6 could not afford to lose a single slice. That bag fed the family 3 different ways before the week ended. Panzanella, ribollita, polpette. 3 meals from bread that another family would have discarded. Number 22, the garlic oil remedy. When a child in the tenement had a chest cold, your great-grandmother warmed olive oil in a spoon, crushed a garlic clove into it, and rubbed it on the child's ribs. She put a version of that same oil on pasta an hour later. In 1934, garlic cost a penny a head. The drugstore wanted 50 cents for cough syrup that did less. 1 clove, 2 uses, 0 cents wasted. That was her pharmacy. Number 21, the potato water thickener. She never poured potato water down the drain. Your great-grandmother saved it and used it to thicken soups, stretch sauces, and start bread dough. The starch did the work of flour without costing a cent more. In 1933, 5 pounds of potatoes cost 11 cents. The water was free. We now buy cornstarch in a box for $3.49 and pour potato water straight into the sink without thinking. She thought about everything. Number 20, the Parmesan rind. Your great-grandmother dropped the hard rind of the Parmesan wedge into her soup pot and let it simmer for hours. The rind melted slowly, releasing salt and fat and a depth of flavor that grated cheese on top could never reach. In 1930, a pound of imported Parmesan cost 40 cents, and she made that wedge last a full month. The rind was not leftovers. The rind was the finale. It was the last act of a wedge that had already given everything, and it still had more to give. 5 tricks in, and every one of them came from something most kitchens throw away. Bread ends, onion skins, potato water, cheese rinds. Not one of these cost money. Every one of them was common knowledge in the tenement kitchens of the Lower East Side, the row houses of South Philadelphia, the cold water flats of East Boston. A 1938 Bureau of Labor Statistics survey found that Italian-American households in New York spent 38% less on groceries per capita than the citywide average, while reporting higher caloric intake per family member. That gap was not cheap food. It was knowledge passed from mother to daughter across the ocean and across centuries. Something broke that chain. It was not time, and before this video is over, you will know exactly what it was. Number 19. The Fennel Top Soup. At the pushcart market on Mulberry Street in 1926, your great-grandmother bought fennel for 2 cents a bunch, but she did not buy it for the bulb. She bought it for the tops, the feathery green fronds that grocery stores now cut off and discard before the fennel even reaches the shelf. She simmered those tops with white beans and a heel of bread until the broth turned cloudy and sweet. The part we throw away was the part she came for. That soup fed 3 children dinner for under 3 cents. The fronds were the meal. We treat them like garbage. Number 18. The rendered fat jar. Next to the lemon peel jar on the windowsill sat another jar. This one held fat. Every time your great-grandmother cooked pork or scraped drippings from a roasting pan, the fat went into that jar. She used it to start every sofrito, fry bread, grease a baking pan. In 1928, a pound of commercial lard cost 14 cents. Her jar cost nothing because it replenished itself from every meal she cooked. The jar was a savings account made of heat and patience. It never closed. Number 17. The citrus peel candy. When oranges appeared in winter, your great-grandmother peeled them carefully, cut the rind into strips, boiled the strips 3 times to pull out the bitterness, then simmered them in sugar water until they turned translucent. She dried them on a cloth and rolled them in sugar. In 1935, oranges cost 25 cents a dozen and sugar cost 5 cents a pound. The children believed this was a luxury. The actual cost was almost nothing. The luxury was her patience. Number 16. The egg water garden. Your great-grandmother kept a windowsill garden in coffee cans. Basil, parsley, sometimes a pepper plant. She watered those plants with the water she had boiled eggs in. The calcium from the shells leached into the liquid and fed the roots. In 1930, eggs cost 28 cents a dozen. The water was free. The herbs those plants grew would have cost 5 cents a bunch at the pushcart. She grew her own supply on a windowsill and paid nothing for it. Number 15. The vinegar rinse. Your great-grandmother washed her vegetables in water cut with a splash of white vinegar. The acetic acid killed bacteria on the surface and extended the life of greens by days in a kitchen that had no refrigerator. In 1932, a bottle of vinegar cost 10 cents and lasted a month. Food scientists at Rutgers University did not formally document this antibacterial effect until 1998. She was 60 years ahead of the laboratory. That is not poverty, that is engineering. Number 14. The flour stretch. In 1942, USDA field researchers in East Harlem watched Italian women take a single pound of flour, mix it with water, eggs, and a pinch of salt, roll it thin enough to read a newspaper through, and cut it into pasta that fed an entire family of 8. The government filed a report on it because they could not figure out how 1 pound became enough. The answer was the rolling pin and the patience behind it. In 1942, a pound of flour cost 4 cents. We now pay $1.89 for a box of dried pasta that weighs the same and tastes like nothing in particular. Number 13. The coffee grounds scrub. Your great-grandmother scrubbed her cast-iron pots with spent coffee grounds. The coarse texture cut through grease without scratching the seasoning she had spent years building on that surface. She also scattered grounds around her windowsill plants to keep ants out of the kitchen. In 1931, a pound of coffee cost 26 cents, and she used those grounds twice before discarding them. A bottle of kitchen degreaser now costs $4.79 and contains chemicals she could not have pronounced. Hers worked better and cost nothing. 13 tricks so far, and not one required a product from a store shelf. That was the problem, not for the women who used them, for the companies that needed them to stop. In 1953, General Foods coined the term convenience food. By 1954, Swanson had spent millions on television ads telling American women that a frozen dinner in an aluminum tray was freedom. They sold 35 million TV dinners in 2 years. By 1960, the frozen food industry was placing ads in Italian-American community newspapers in Brooklyn and South Philadelphia, targeting the daughters of the women on this list. The message was not subtle. Homemade is old-fashioned, store-bought is American. Swanson's line was printed on every box. Nothing to clean up. They did not sell food. They sold shame, and a generation of daughters stopped asking their mothers how the sofrito was made, not because they forgot, because they were taught it was beneath them. Number 12, the pasta water finish. Your great-grandmother never rinsed her pasta. She scooped it from the pot with a slotted spoon and dropped it straight into the sauce, then ladled the starchy cooking water in after it. That water bound the sauce to the noodle. It thickened without flour. It glossed without butter. In 1934, a pound of pasta cost 8 cents. The water did what a chef in a Manhattan restaurant now charges $22 to do and calls a professional technique. She did not call it anything. It was just how you did it. Number 11. The leftover pasta frittata. When pasta was left over from the night before, your great-grandmother cracked 2 eggs over it, added whatever cheese was left in the house, and fried it flat in oil from the fat jar until the bottom turned golden and the top barely set. In 1933, 2 eggs cost 5 cents. The pasta was yesterday's. The cheese was the last scraping from the wedge. That frittata fed a father before his 5 a.m. shift at the rail yard. He ate it standing in the dark kitchen before anyone else woke up. It was enough. Number 10, the tomato paste stretch. It is 1935 and your great-grandmother opens a small tin of tomato paste. She does not empty it into the pot. She takes 1 tablespoon, fries it in olive oil until it darkens and concentrates, then adds water slowly, scraping the bottom of the pan with a wooden spoon. 1 tablespoon becomes a full cup of sauce. That tin cost 5 cents in 1935, and she stretched it across 4 meals for a family of 6. A jar of ready-made pasta sauce now costs $5.49, and most of it is water, sugar, and citric acid mixed in a factory. She built her sauce 1 spoonful at a time in a 10-inch pan. We open a jar and pretend it is the same thing. It is not the same thing. Number 9. The bread soup revival. Your great-grandmother called it Papa al Pomodoro, but that name makes it sound like a recipe from a cookbook. It was not a recipe. It was an act of rescue. Bread that had gone so stale you could not bite it was torn apart and dropped into a pot of tomatoes, garlic, oil, and water. It simmered until the bread dissolved and the whole thing became a porridge thick enough to hold a spoon upright. In 1930, this cost 7 cents and fed 3 people. A restaurant in Greenwich Village now serves the same dish for $19 and calls it artisanal. The bread your great-grandmother used was not artisanal. It was Tuesday's bread on Thursday. That was the whole art. Number 8. The lemon peel preservation jar. This is the jar from the opening of this video. Cloudy water and lemon peels sitting on a windowsill in a tenement kitchen. Your great-grandmother used that water to rinse vegetables and wash herbs before storing them wrapped in a damp cloth. The citric acid from the peels created a mildly acidic solution that slowed bacterial growth and kept greens crisp for days without refrigeration. In 1928, most tenement kitchens on the Lower East Side did not have ice boxes. They had windowsills. A food preservation study conducted at Cornell University in 2004 confirmed that dilute citric acid solutions extended the shelf life of fresh produce more effectively than plain water rinsing. Your great-grandmother did not need that study. She had a jar and a lemon peel and 4 children who needed greens to last until Friday. The science caught up to her 76 years later. Number 7. The vegetable scrap broth. Your great-grandmother kept a pot on the back of the stove that never fully cooled. Into it went every scrap a modern kitchen throws away without thinking. Carrot tops, celery leaves, parsley stems, onion ends, garlic skins, potato peels. That pot simmered from morning until evening, and by dinner time it was broth, real broth, dark and layered and built from nothing a store would ever sell. In 1929, those scraps cost nothing on any receipt, but they meant everything in a bowl. A container of organic vegetable broth at the supermarket now costs $5.99 for 32 ounces. Your great-grandmother made a gallon a day from the things we put in the garbage. She would not understand why we pay for what she made from nothing. Number 6. The stale bread meatball. Your great-grandmother soaked stale bread in milk until it turned soft, squeezed it dry with both hands, and folded it into ground meat with an egg and a fistful of parmesan grated from the last dry edge of the wedge. The bread was not filler, it was the secret. It made the meatball tender in a way that pure meat never could, and it stretched half a pound of beef into enough polpette to feed 6 people around a table. In 1932, ground beef cost 12 cents a pound, and the bread was free. A package of frozen meatballs now costs $7.99 for 12, and the ingredients list includes soy protein, modified cornstarch, and dextrose. Your great-grandmother's meatballs contained bread and an egg, and 4 generations of knowing exactly how hard to squeeze. That knowledge is not on the label because it was never in the factory. It was not just Swanson. It was not just General Foods. By 1975, the processed food industry in the United States was spending $5 billion a year on advertising Kraft, Campbell's, Stouffer's, Chef Boyardee, whose real name was Ettore Boiardi, an Italian immigrant from Piacenza who built his brand by replacing the very cooking his own mother practiced with canned pasta in bright red sauce. They sold speed and modernity. They sold the idea that a woman who spent hours building broth from vegetable scraps was wasting her life. In 1971, a researcher at the Center for Migration Studies on Staten Island recorded an interview with a 78-year-old woman from Catanzaro, Calabria, who had arrived in America in 1912. She described a method her mother taught her for preserving tomatoes through winter using salt, basil leaves, and sunlight on a fire escape in East Harlem. She described the jars lined up on the iron railing. She described the smell of the basil darkening in August heat. She described teaching her eldest daughter the full process in 1936. Then she said the thing that stops you cold. Her daughter had not made those tomatoes since 1954, the year Swanson launched the TV dinner. And by 1971, the old woman could no longer remember the exact sequence of steps herself. She said, "I knew it once, I did it every year, but nobody asked me for so long that the knowing went away. The knowledge did not disappear on its own. It was starved." Number 5. The aqua cotta. It is 1924, and your great-grandmother has nothing in the kitchen. Not nothing the way we use that word today. Nothing. There is no meat, no cheese, no butter. There is a heel of bread, a clove of garlic, 1 egg, and water from the tap. She heats the water with the garlic and a single bay leaf from the plant growing in a coffee can on the fire escape. She tears the bread into the pot. When the liquid simmers, she cracks the egg directly into it and watches the white turn opaque in the steam. In Tuscany, this was called acqua cotta, cooked water, and it kept families alive for centuries before it ever had a name anyone wrote down. In 1924, the entire meal cost under 3 cents, and it kept a woman on her feet long enough to wash other people's floors for 15 cents an hour. The last generation to make acqua cotta from memory, rather than from a recipe found online, is now in their late 80s. No restaurant serves this dish because there is nothing to mark up. No corporation can package it because the technique is the product. That is exactly why you were never taught it. Number 4. The Sunday gravy economics. It is Saturday night in 1930 and your great-grandmother is browning scraps of meat in a heavy pot on a cast-iron stove in a tenement kitchen on Mott Street. A pork rib she asked the butcher for by name. A piece of beef neck he gave her for a nickel because nobody else wanted it. Maybe a sausage she made herself from trimmings and fennel seed and a casing she cleaned by hand. She builds the sauce around those bones, simmering for hours until the collagen dissolves and the thin tomato becomes thick and layered with a richness that no jar will ever replicate, because richness like that requires time. And time is the one ingredient no factory can add. The meat cost 10 cents, the tomatoes cost 8 cents, the pasta cost 8 cents. 26 cents total for a pot that fed 8 to 10 people on Sunday afternoon, and the leftover sauce carried the family through 2 more dinners during the week. We now buy a jar of Rouse for $8.99 and pour it cold over boiled noodles and call it Sunday dinner. The jar contains no bones, it contains no hours, it contains no one's hands. That is not the same meal, it was never going to be. Number 3. The panzanella that became a $26 plate. The cloth bag from number 23, the one hanging from a nail in the kitchen. Your great-grandmother reached into that bag, took out bread that had gone hard as wood, ran it under the tap until it softened just enough, squeezed it dry, tore it into rough pieces and tossed it in a bowl with ripe tomatoes, sliced raw onion, olive oil and torn basil leaves still warm from the windowsill. Panzanella. She made it every August because the bread was stale and free, the tomatoes were cheap from the pushcarts on Elizabeth Street, and the kitchen was too hot to light the stove. In 1928, this fed a family of 5 for 6 cents. In 2019, a restaurant on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, 4 blocks from the tenement building where your great-grandmother once lived, listed a panzanella salad on its dinner menu for $26. They used the same bread, the same tomatoes, the same oil. They called it heritage cuisine. Your great-grandmother called it lunch on a day when the stove stayed cold. The recipe did not travel upward, the credit did. Number 2, the bone broth from nothing. It is 1929. And your great-grandmother walks into the butcher shop on Mott Street. She is not there for meat, she is there for bones, beef knuckles, marrow bones. The joints and scraps the butcher cannot sell to anyone willing to pay full price. She pays 3 cents a pound for them, and sometimes the butcher gives them to her free because he knows she has 5 children and a husband who works construction and comes home in December with his hands shaking from the cold. She roasts those bones in the oven until they crack open, then covers them with water, adds onion, carrot, celery, parsley stems, and a whole garlic clove still in its papery skin. She lets the pot simmer for 6 hours on the back of the stove. The broth that comes out is dark gold, and it sets into jelly when it cools because the collagen is that concentrated. That broth healed fevers. It stretched into 3 more meals across the week. It was medicine before medicine was something her family could afford. A brand called Brodo now sells 16 ounces of bone broth for $12 in a cup and markets it as a wellness trend. Your great-grandmother would not understand the price. She would understand the broth. She made it from what other people threw away, and it kept her children alive. Number 1. The jar of rendered fat. This is number 1, and it is not a recipe. It is an object. The jar of rendered fat from number 18. The one that sat on the windowsill next to the lemon peel water from the very first moment of this video. Your great-grandmother never emptied that jar. She added to it and took from it day after day, year after year, for as long as she lived in that kitchen. Every time she cooked pork or scraped drippings from a roasting pan, the fat went in. Every time she started a sofrito or fried bread for the children, or greased a baking dish for Sunday, the fat came out. In 1928, a pound of commercial lard cost 14 cents. Her jar cost nothing because it rebuilt itself from every meal she cooked. But this was never about the fat. This was about continuity. A single jar that carried the flavor of every meal that came before it into every meal that followed. When her daughter moved to the suburbs in 1957, she bought Crisco in a bright blue can because a magazine advertisement told her it was cleaner and more modern. The jar stayed behind in the tenement kitchen. Nobody took it. Nobody asked what it was. Nobody asked what it meant. A lifetime of cooking rendered down to nothing, left on a windowsill in a building that was torn down the following year. The jar did not spoil. The knowledge inside it did. The jar on the windowsill, cloudy water with lemon peels, sitting in a tenement kitchen on Mulberry Street in 1932. It was never decoration. It was preservation technology older than refrigeration, brought from southern Italy in the memory of a woman who could not read, but who understood the chemistry of citric acid well enough to keep her family's vegetables alive for 5 days in a kitchen with no icebox. She did not know the word for what she was doing. She just knew it worked. And when her grandchildren moved to houses with refrigerators, the jar was the first thing they stopped making. It was the first thing they forgot. These were never poverty tricks. That is the lie this entire video was built to destroy. These were techniques refined across centuries by women who understood food at a level that modern science is only now beginning to confirm with laboratory studies and peer-reviewed papers. The knowledge was not lost. It was taken. An industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars needed you to believe that your grandmother's kitchen was primitive so that you would buy what they were selling instead. Every jar of pre-made sauce, every box of powdered broth, every frozen dinner sealed in a plastic tray exists because someone decided that your great-grandmother's hands were not enough. They were always enough. I made aqua cotta on a Wednesday night last winter. Bread, garlic, 1 egg, water. It took 11 minutes. I sat at the table alone and I ate it, and I thought about the fact that my grandmother is 89 years old and I have never once sat beside her and asked her to teach me what she knows. I am running out of Wednesdays. Make one dish from this list before the week is over. Start with the sofrito. 3 vegetables, chopped fine, cooked slow in olive oil until they dissolve. It takes 10 minutes and it will change every meal you cook after it. That is not nostalgia. That is reclamation. Tell me in the comments, did your grandmother keep a jar on the windowsill? And if she did anyone ever ask her what it was for before it was too late?